Hello everyone, welcome to Crypto Basics Coach podcast. I'm Marco. I'm here to help people navigate this topic so as to benefit from the opportunity this new technology provides and not get distracted or put off from the nonsense there is out there about crypto. Anything and everything presented and discussed, whether here or in our sessions, is of an educational nature and should never be taken as financial advice. Always do your due diligence and consult professionals before making any final decisions. Episode 2. How did I get started? About 8 years ago was the first time that I encountered crypto because my best friend's wife rang me up and said, what do you know about Bitcoin? And at that point, I didn't know anything about Bitcoin other than what I might have heard, maybe a whisper here and there. My reply to her was that I believe it's some sort of bartering system, bartering currency that you use on the internet, but that you can't use it in the outside world. She pretty much took that response, hung up, and to this day, she still reminds me of, why didn't you tell us to buy Bitcoin 8 years ago? Look where we'd be today. And that was it for about 4 years. About 4.5 years ago, a friend of mine who I play tennis with turned around and asked me the same question. Well, do you know anything about Bitcoin? And I said, my friend's wife asked me that question a few years ago. My understanding is that it's a bartering system and that you can't really use the money outside of the internet. And he said, no, not exactly. And I said, well, what do you mean? How would you use Bitcoin outside of the system? And he reached into his wallet and pulled out a Crypto.com card. And I said, well, what's that? He said, it's a debit card. You can put money on it. You can spend it as you normally would a debit card. However, you're able to accumulate CRO. That's C-R-O. CRO is the coin for the Crypto.com network. And I said, and what do you do with that CRO? He said, you can convert it. You can swap it for other cryptos, or you can convert it to money, and then you can spend it. And at that point, I went, oh, hold on a minute. I need to look into this a little bit deeper. So I started my journey looking into crypto because I thought, well, if I can just be spending money that I would normally spend, and in the back end I could be actually accumulating crypto, well, what's the harm? So I got the card, learned a little bit about staking, which is something you need to do on the card. And then I started jumping into YouTube. And my first YouTube video was obviously one that was going to explain, well, what's Bitcoin? That then explained it from a blockchain perspective. It explained it from a mining perspective. Mining is the operation that Bitcoin uses in order to be able to perform transactions, validate transactions, and essentially add transactions onto the blockchain. And so I started looking into Bitcoin. I read the white paper. For those of you not from IT, white papers are essentially a document that explains the technology. Similar to how in the medical industry you may get like a medical journal getting published. In IT you get white papers. And every technology has a white paper. So I read the Bitcoin white paper. I thought, okay, so this is supposed to be a peer-to-peer payment system, totally decentralized, totally trustless, which is a big factor in crypto. The whole trustless aspect and characteristic of cryptos is quite important. You don't need to have intermediaries. A lot of the intermediaries that are around today that are making money, a little percentage here, a little percentage there, in all of these different transactions, is all because typically when you're dealing with someone, you don't trust them, they don't trust you, and you need an intermediary. But that can cost a lot of money and also causes a lot of inefficiencies. So I looked into Bitcoin. Very quickly, I started to look at mining because I thought, well, if I can have a computer that can participate on the network and the rewards are generated in Bitcoin, I can also accumulate Bitcoin. But I soon found out that as of about 4.5 years ago, perhaps even longer, you needed fairly sophisticated hardware to be able to participate on the network and to actually get enough rewards. Some of the farms around the world are absolutely monstrous, and you're essentially competing with them to essentially resolve the algorithm that you do with Bitcoin to then get the rewards in Bitcoin. So I very quickly worked out that rather than spending $10,000 to $15,000 on a rig, it was, if I was going to spend that sort of money, then you might as well just invest in Bitcoin. And at that stage, I bought a little bit. Once I did, and once, of course, you're exposed to the YouTube channels and the crypto industry, you fairly quickly start looking down the list. And the next crypto that was the second biggest in the industry was Ethereum. Ethereum uses a different consensus model. It's called staking. At the time I looked into it, it was still proof of work, but it then changed to proof of stake. Looking into Ethereum, it had a very different use case. It seemed to have some more intelligence around it, where you could use smart contracts to actually program it to do things more than just payments back and forth. And so read the white paper, looked into it, understood the use case a little bit, and back then bought a little bit of Ethereum. Very quickly, through the YouTube channels, as you start getting suggested videos coming up, the next asset, the third largest, was XRP. XRP was interesting because, again, it used a different consensus model to Ethereum and Bitcoin. It used a different mechanism. It wasn't as process intensive. It wasn't proof of stake, and it was extremely fast. And the thing that interested me the most about XRP was that its use case was supposed to be to try and resolve inter-border transfers, where you're transferring monies from one currency to the other. Now, in the previous episode, the homework I gave you was you should look up blockchain, understand what blockchain does, where it fits, what it can do, and then you may have a better understanding of what crypto is based on. In today's episode, what I would strongly suggest you look up and learn about is Nostro and Vostro bank accounts. These are the bank accounts that the very large banks who are predominantly involved in international transfers or cross-border payments, as they're referred to sometimes. These are basically very large accounts of money that the banks use to be able to transfer from one or exchange from one currency to another. And XRP was looking to replace the need for those accounts. Now, you have to understand that we're talking about trillions of dollars in these bank accounts. These are not small. These are massive. And so if you could provide the banks with a cheaper alternative, a more efficient alternative, and free up all that capital that is just sitting there doing nothing other than doing transfers, it's not making money for the banks, that's a pretty large use case that they were going after. So again, read the white paper, understood the technology a little bit, understood the use case, and went from there. So 4.5 years ago, that's how I got started. Subsequently, in the last 4.5 years, I've spent thousands of hours looking into this, investigating it, substantiating it, helping people also understand it and get started and take advantage of it, whether that's been videos, seminars, also using the technology when later on we talk about DeFi. That's one way of really getting to know the technologies in actually being able to use them to generate yield. But it's fundamentally, back 4.5 years ago, was that I identified that I had promised myself 20 odd years ago that I wasn't going to miss out on the next .com opportunity. This very quickly started to look to me like this was the next thing, potentially the last opportunity for myself, given my age. And I thought, right, we need to dive into this and grab this opportunity with both hands and really give it a good shake. In the next episode, I'm going to be covering probably the most important thing that you're going to encounter when you start looking into this yourself, which is what I've called FUD. FUD stands for fear, uncertainty, and doubt. You're going to hear a lot of it in this industry. There are a lot of different agendas, different biasness, different dishonest intellectual people that for one reason or another are trying to push their wheelbarrow. And one of the skills you're going to have to learn is how do you sift through all of that FUD, get to the facts, and then determine if the facts can be used in your favour. So that'll be covered in the next episode. But that's my humble beginnings. Hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you in the next episode. Cheers. If you found this information helpful and are interested in a more hand-holding approach while navigating this complex industry, please visit cryptobasicscoach.com, that's basics with an S, and book a session. The first 30-minute session is free, and we can get to know each other, talk about what your aims are, what you're looking to do, and how I might be able to possibly help. I've helped people get started, set up exchange accounts, wallets, DeFi platforms, and general knowledge. Look forward to speaking with you. Cheers.